Listen, I just figured, and we were able to actually have basically a sex education class right then and there, right then and there, with the parent there and able to really counsel and hit some things. Now behind the scenes it's gonna be mama gonna confront and Hulk smash, okay? Smash that, you know what it's gonna be. But at the time, it was like, okay, having the children having the freedom to talk and really say, hey, look, this is what's going on. That really blessed my heart. So me uh having dealt with therapy and counseling and everything, I posted something up on my Facebook to help people with certain situations on how to deal with things that are traumatic, you know, things that you think will not ever affect your children, you know, can affect your children. And so I was able to post up something and to really, so if you're my friends on Facebook, you'll see the posting. It's really interesting. And I think I showed you and you said you had already saw it. This young man was on there and his name was MJ Harris. And he confronted his abuser, you know, his rapist, not just a molester, a rapist. Okay, there is a difference, and he was able to get it out, and it was a family member, and it just really spoke. I thought it was brave, and it really spoke volumes, and a lot of people were helped. A lot of people, you can tell from the comments, have been helped. So when we're in Christian homes and we have our children, there may be things that seem so subtle, okay? Just so subtle that you may not even recognize it, but there's something down on the inside. And what it made me think about was my children were showing signs of some sort of abuse. I didn't know what it was until it was something deep on the inside that said, don't let your children, on deep down on the inside. And we know who that is. That's the Holy Spirit. That's the Holy Spirit talking to you about your children. And now it's strange because my children are grown and they were like, yeah, mom, this was happening. And then next thing you know, mom, we were gone out that situation because you took us out. And it made me feel good because it was like, what? Abuse comes in all different types of shapes, forms, and sizes. And my children were being exposed to weed, like the actual weed dope man, okay? An actual adult saying, hey, I got this weed, and yeah, I'm smoking it, and here, you try it. That's abuse, okay? You would not, and it was a relative. Do you hear what I'm talking to you about? It was a relative. That means these children's own flesh and blood, okay? DNA I'm talking about now. So it's like when the Lord unctions and hits you with something, you need to pay attention and you need to put action to it. You need to put action to it. And I'm so glad, Jackie, that I put action to it. What did you think when you were there? You helped me raise you're their godmother, and you helped me raise my children when their dad wasn't there, even though I was married 27 years. You were there to help me raise them. And what did you think when we started? Really?
Well, um, what did I think about what was going on with them? Or,
Yes.
well, I think dealing with people who discover that something has happened to their child, go
Ephraim,
through
I'm online on this phone, honey.
go
What?
through lots of
What? I'm on live.
Damn, I'm trying to ask you a fucking question.
Oh wow. Sorry about that, guys. That was unintentional. If you did hear that online, let me make sure that I got my earphone in so I can really talk. There we go. Okay, now that I got my earbuds on, I can hear everything, and I do have some thoughts. So the topic that we're talking about tonight is how to respond if your child or someone that you know and love comes to you with a report of being abused. That's the subject that we're talking about tonight. When it's pretty heavy subject, honestly. It's not something that anybody really wants to face. But what we want to communicate in our broadcast today is that your response to the revelation can have the biggest impact as to whether or not the incident that occurred is a speed bump on the road to life, or if it's a major barrier that stops a person from living their fullest life.
Please say that all over again.
I'm going to say that one more
This
time.
forecast is about.
I'm going to say this one more time, just to make sure to hammer the point home, that when a young person or someone you know or love comes to you with a revelation that they have been abused in some way, our response to that revelation can make all the difference between whether or not it is a speed bump on the road of life or whether it is a major barrier that prevents their life from moving forward or stops their life from moving forward in a healthy way. Usually when a young person, there's many different scenarios to this. Who is an adult comes to you with a revelation that perhaps this is their first time confronting in their own lives. If it's your child or a child that you know, number one, your very first response should be, don't flip out. That's number one. Don't flip out, because it takes a lot of courage for a person to reveal that something has happened to them. It may have happened one time. It may have happened over a long period of time. But the most important thing is that usually if it's a child that has been predated upon, or a predator, sorry for the big word, if a predator has done something to your child, and I'm going to define predator in a moment. If a predator has done something to your child or done something that is grooming your child for something in the future, usually there is a bond of secrecy that comes along with that trauma. Don't tell, because if you tell, then I won't be able to spend time with you anymore. Or if you tell, your mom or dad would be mad at you. If you tell, I'm going to do something bad to you or to someone you love.
Right.
There's a bond of secrecy oftentimes that gets associated with this grooming or this activity that is being done. So if your child is having the courage to come to you with a revelation that something has happened, your first response should be, don't flip out. Because how you respond can have a lot to do with whether or not the door stays open or the door gets closed.
Or stays closed.
On you being able to help their situation. If you flip out and you get to cussing and getting upset and now I need to say this, those may be your natural reactions and your natural responses
Are usually right from the first.
But I'm going to ask you to hold on to them in that moment. Just hold them in this scenario to express what's going on and ask questions that remove your emotion out of the conversation. Because if you react the way your natural emotion would be, shock, rage, anger, fury, then it can cause that young person to retreat back into that bond of secrecy.
Oh, yeah.
Because in their mind, they're saying, yep, that abuser, they were right. When I said something, my mama flipped out. She got upset. And if they're a child, they can't always distinguish that you're mad at the perpetrator and you're not mad at them.
Right.
But they don't know the difference. They just know that all of a sudden mommy has an angry face, or mommy's upset, or mommy's cussing, or mommy's doing, or daddy's doing whatever. Daddy's ready to punch a wall or whatever. Although that may be your first emotional reaction.
Also, believe it or not, it's a little bit deeper, because when I was abused, I actually said, and children love the person. Did you know that? They may love the relative and don't even want the relative to get in trouble, or it's a very mind-blowing thing. Because they want to say something, but they also have fear that the person that they actually care about, that may be their cousin, brother, uncle, sister, it don't matter, father, whoever it is, they don't want to see them get in trouble. So it's important that how you handle it is behind closed doors, okay? Real talk, because there's a lot more involved.
Well, when you say behind closed doors,
And
I
what
think
I
what
mean
you
by
mean
that-
is not in front of the young person.
Well, when I say behind closed doors is once you've been given the information that my mother actually or my father actually thinks it's wrong and they're going to do something about it. Now that's for
Well, there's a time and a place
there's-
for that.
right,
But we're talking about when that revelation first happens.
But listen to what I'm trying to tell you right now. There's some children that say that, well, when I told you about it, you never did anything about it. You understand what I'm saying now when I say that? So sometimes people, you have to discern at the time when you're listening and hearing these things happen, you have to listen to the Holy Spirit and look at your child. Pay attention to their non-verbals. Pay attention, because you want them to know that, hey, this is not right. This is wrong. And we were able to express that in a way to them to where the children actually thought that it was their idea, that, yeah, we don't want to go back there. And yeah, I think I think that's a little bit like this and that's a little, and we were able to get through to them. Now, behind closed doors is what I'm talking about. That parent is going to go deal with that situation and that person. Okay? Some situations do need to be confronted head on, but you have to discern in what way. And I do mean that. The ultimate thing is that your child wants to know that you protected and you did something about the situation. And that for me was important, because no one did anything about my situation except for myself. I'm the one that climbed up into a ceiling with fiberglass to get away from these eight guys, these 8 boys that this foster mother left me right there at the house while she went to the store, and I'm begging to go with her, and she left me there, and I hid there. I did whatever I did. I peed on myself up in the rooftop, up in the fiberglass, up in that area. They didn't know where I was. I saved myself. You understand? I wanted someone to protect me, and she didn't. But guess what? Glory be to God, Jackie. You're a witness. I was able to. The first guy, now it didn't go so well for him, because Hulk smash. That's all I could. That's all I could do. The second guy, I had grew a lot more in the Lord. I understood forgiveness. My life was in a different place. I had started getting therapy and things of that nature. And so I was able to deal with that person differently. And then they were able to say, you're right. I apologize. I'm sorry. Even though it was over 20 something years, and then last but not least, they were like, I have daughters now and I would, never do that. And da 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 da, but you're right, and da da da. I know the Lord now. There was something still inside of me that wanted to prosecute them, though. Listen to me, what I'm telling you. Not to suffer, but to say, because at the time I didn't really know if this person was being authentic, or where they were just trying to con me, or just trying to, lure me off the sniff, off the smell, and whatever have you, and so I was there, and I was looking at his wife. Did you? And she said yes, and he's been in therapy. So she knew, because I didn't want it to be something where it was perpetuated, continually. But I'm telling you, you have to pay attention to your children. You have to pay attention to them. You have to listen to them, and you have to discern. You have to use the Holy Spirit to show you and to tell you what's happening at that moment in time. And I mean it. Now, I think you remember when my son Aram said, "Mom, look at this." And remember, he had brought a CD, and it was a pornography DVD that he had gotten. Do you remember that, Jackie? Do you remember that? I knew it wasn't for me. I didn't have no such thing. When I saw and I knew where he had been, okay, I said, and then I saw it, and then he was like, "Mom," he was like, "This," and that's when I knew he wanted me to do something about it. So that particular time, I did get angry. Let's go. We about to hand. He's like, yes. And I mean, because you have to discern when they're saying, do something about this right now. I want you to show some sign. I want to see some passion in you. You can tell. Now, with the situation that happened with my youngest son, when they were offering him weed and things like that, he was like, Mama, I shouldn't have, that's a difference.
So I think that there's nothing more powerful than person's personal testimony or personal experience. And thank you for sharing that, because not everybody is bold enough to share their own personal experiences. But let's circle back a little bit to the bond of secrecy and how we should be responding if we receive a report from a young person that something has happened, whether it's abuse or whether it's they were offered drugs or whether they were shown pornography. It doesn't matter. Okay, a revelation comes to you, it's going to be shocking to you. So to recap, step one, don't flip out in front of them. Step two, do let them know that they are being heard, they are being believed, and they are being supported, which is what you were saying, is that
Yes.
they need to know that they have a champion in their corner, an advocate in their corner, someone that will stand up for them,
Right.
speak for them, protect them, etc. The third thing is, do not blame the child.
Right.
There have
What
been,
did you do? Like my foster mother, what did you this and what did you that? What? What? You dress me every day. Look, I didn't wear anything sexy. I didn't do nothing. You're the one that dressed me. I didn't do nothing. I wasn't fast. All I did was sat in the corner Indian style every day in the corner. That's how I was. I didn't mess with nobody, but believing your child is very, very important, and not blaming them is important. Well, what did you do to deserve it?
the fourth thing is to it goes along with believing the child, and that is, do not ignore what they're telling you. Oh, that didn't happen. You don't know what you're talking about. So and so could never be capable of doing that thing that you're saying. You're lying. Don't ever accuse them of lying. Yes, sometimes children do lie. Sometimes children do act out. But something, you know your child. You know when your child is lying or not lying. But what happens is sometimes, here's a scenario. Young child comes to you with the revelation that stepdad, boyfriend, husband, grandfather, or stepdaddy so and so, or grandpa so and so, or boyfriend so and so. This is what happened to my child, your daughter or your son, because this applies both.
Mm-hmm.
Do not tell your child, stop lying. Uncle so and so didn't do that. My boyfriend wouldn't do nothing like that to you.
To the moon
Stop lying, because then you start getting into a scenario where now your child can't trust nobody. They can't trust the person going to grow up unable to trust anybody ever, which means that can cause their relationships in the future to fail. You'll wonder why they're extra promiscuous, or why they're abusive, or why they're frigid, or why they're homosexual, or why they're studied out, or why they're, you name it.
Talk effeminate, have effeminate ways, or have masculine ways that they shouldn't. Because I had a self mechanism. I don't know if anybody knows my testimony. I have a book coming out, but for me, mine's became the opposite. I don't want to be around men that will hurt me or do something to me. So it became a self mechanism that I got to be tough all the time. It became to the point where when they were about to place me in a foster home, okay, I would know who the abuser was automatically. That's the truth. And I'd be like, I don't want to stay here because that person is abuser. And they'll look at me like, what? You're a kid. How do you know something like that? You're going to stay there. Nope, I'll run away. I will not. And you watch and see. And that's what I did. I ran away from home. I would run, not from my home, but from the foster parents. But that's what I would do. And you were right. They will tell you stuff like, oh, there ain't no way. There ain't no way that person will do that. Yes, it is. When the devil is in somebody, it don't matter what shape or form, it will take you on. It does not matter. And here's another thing. 10 times out of 10, the ones who are the abusers were abused themselves. So it goes deeper. The person that's doing this stuff has in some way, shape, or form been abused also.
Well, there have been studies.
Hurting people hurt people a lot of the time.
There have been studies done about pedophiles, just as one example, and they begin to explore what attracts them to children of a certain age. So let's say that you have a pedophile and he's always messing with boys between the ages of 8 and 10. Let's just say, I'm making this up. When they get into the psychological profile of this pedophile, oftentimes they will find that that's when that man or woman, that man got touched, was between the ages of 8 and 10, and essentially their growth got stunted, if that makes sense.
Sure.
This traumatic experience that happened at age 8 has caused them to be stuck in some ways at age 8. So now they're an adult and they feel like the childhood, that the innocence that was stolen from them at age 8, they're trying to reclaim that by sexually getting involved with the child of the age the same. That makes sense?
And what I've noticed, having gone through it, is sometimes what it is they mimic what was done to them. The actions that were done to them, they actually, it's like, it's not saying I give you permission, but what it's saying is, oh, that's what happened. I'm gonna do the same thing because this must be okay. This must be okay over here to do because, well, it was done to me, so that must mean that I can do the same thing. And to a person that is of that age of when that happened to them. Or it don't have to be, listen, yeah, there's just some people out there that got screws all the way loose. It don't have to be nothing that happened. They just do that stuff. Okay? It's just in them to do. If you notice a tree, if you cut the years of this tree's life, there are rings. If you cut it, you'll see during which year may have been a bad year or may have been something that happened to damage that tree. Okay? But the tree still keeps growing, though that marker is there. When a person, this happens to someone, they need therapy, and you have to go back to that time when that happened. So a person can be in their 70, 60 years old or 50 years old, 30 years old, 20 years old, but you still have to go back to that age that they were when that happened so that they can be liberated and freed. You have to talk to the 6-year-old in that person's life, that 4-year-old in that person's life, or that they don't know when it first started, but you know, and the reason why I can say this, because like I said, I'm being transparent here. My real mother, my family is not going to like this, but my real family, I remember my real mother in my real family having what I know now to be a dildo, boing it around in front of me, and I'm trying to reach for it. The strangest thing is, I was young, but now that I'm older, I know when I seen those visions in my head, what I now know what that was. And that told me that my mother was abusive. That's why I got taken away from my mother numerous times. My mother was a singer. She traveled. She did all kinds of things. My mother, and it's strange that my mother was a hairstylist. And I'm like, wow, I'm a hairstylist. Unbeknownst that there are correlations. Satan, he will try and take the sins of the parents and put them off on you as the child, or your children, or your children's children. But the thing about it, but God is the one, Yahweh, he is the one who can come in and can save and find that year and that time in that tree of that person's life where it was wounded, and can handle and get that out of there. He takes off layer by layer by layer, layer by layer by layer. And I want to thank Sister Tila for this, because when I was young, I didn't really, it's strange because they didn't have any of that stuff in my file. When I was a foster child, they never put in there, this child has been sexually abused, or this child has been threatened, this child has been almost killed, murdered. They didn't put none of that stuff. My parents had no manual. They didn't know what the heck was going on with me. They just knew that I was acting out. And Sister Tila, who had gotten saved underneath my father, who has an amazing ministry called Compassion in Action, she actually, I revealed something to her that I had not even told my parents. And you know what she did? She let the Lord, listen, she prayed for me. She prayed for me and she said, listen, things sometimes come off by layers. I'll never forget it. Sometimes one layer, sometimes two layers, sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 layers. But one thing's for sure, they will come off. If you allow the Lord, they will come off. And glory be to God. God has saved me. He has made me, rearranged me. I no more want to murder people. I wanted to murder. I wanted to find them. This is after I had grew up. I wanted to find them and I wanted to go pew, pew. That's what I wanted to do. And God came in because you don't know what type of effects that you leave on people's life. If you're an abuser, you don't really know the effects that you in the trauma, like a broken record, that stuff keep on playing in people's mind. You don't trust nobody, Jackie. You don't trust nobody. You don't trust people. You can't relax and just be yourself around people. You're always in this judge mode, this mode of, okay, I'm meeting this person, what's up with this person? You know, I'm putting that lightly, but it's a lot deeper. You know, and I'm just telling you that we have to also, when our children tell us things, you also have to make notes. Make notes about things so that you don't forget certain things, because when they get in therapy, you just want to make sure that those things are being spoken to so that they can be, and sometimes, y'all forgive me for saying this, I love Christian therapists, but every once in a while you might have to have a medical therapist, a psychological therapist, because there are things that Christians, that even though they love God and they pray and they are awesome, there are still things that sometimes cannot be dealt with. Okay, and what I mean by that is,
Can I expand on what you're saying there?
oh yeah, to help it along, because I'm not saying that Christian
Well,
therapy
Christian
doesn't.
therapists are fantastic
They
if
are.
you find a board certified
Sure.
therapist who happens to be a Christian and brings a Christian worldview to the table.
Right.
Those are fantastic. I think what you're talking about is, you go to a pastor or a deacon or maybe somebody in your church and they love the Lord, but
They're
they may not
equipped.
necessarily have the
They're not
psychological
equipped.
credentials.
They're not equipped. Yeah, sometimes they're not equipped to deal with things that are a little deeper. You know, like that are deeper. Psychopathic is what I'm talking about. Things of that nature. Because we'll just throw, won't we, as Christians, that ain't nothing but a demon. You say psycho? You know, that ain't nothing but I'm about to cast the devil out you. Pow! Blood in the name of Jesus. That does work.
There is a place for deliverance,
Yes,
depending
there
upon
is.
the context.
There is.
But sometimes there's work that needs to be done
Right.
after the immediate deliverance,
Sure.
such as the story of Lazarus. He died, and they had wrapped him in grave clothing, and Jesus showed up 4 days later and called him forth back from the dead,
And he
and he was alive again. But immediately he had to tell them, go and help him take his grave clothes
unwrap
off.
him. Yeah, unwrap
And
him.
that's the way it is sometimes, that yes, God can supernaturally do something in your life to heal those wounds or bring deliverance into your life. But then there's still sometimes work that needs to be done, whether it's re-examining the events in light of scriptural understanding or adult understanding, working through forgiveness issues, bitterness, guilt, shame, rejection, abandonment, self-loathing, all those emotions
Rooted.
that got
They're very
attached
deeply
to it.
rooted. Yeah, they're rooted. And sometimes things get unrooted. Sometimes things get detached. We talk about a lot of times things are rooted down in us, the root of bitterness, the root of this, the root of that. But also too, it can allow you to not be empathetic. It can allow you to not have certain things like the fruits of the spirit, which is love, joy. There's some people that are probably angry simply because an anger was uprooted in them. They might have been a kind, very kind and loving and not angry child, but when sometimes there's things that's to them to grow up in them. There are also things that are removed from them. That's the reason why sometimes you can have people that are bitter and have a hard time loving, healthy love, healthy boundaries, things of that nature, because it's only he can restore that unto us the joy. Isn't that what the scripture talks about? God restoring unto us the joy of the Lord. That's important, that you know that God has given all of us a measure of love and all the things that we need to be equipped with to do the job that he set before us. Where he sends us, he qualifies us. Okay, and he backs us up, and excuse the expression, uh he he takes and gives us everything, all the money and all the things that we need to do what he's chosen us to do. And that's the reason why we are talking about this today, because and it also allowed me to, you see a lot, and you're able to speak into things. Like when I sat there, I said to myself, okay, wow, they bringing this out right here. And I was basically like, this is an opportunity here. And I'm looking at the parent like, should I say anything? Should I not? And the Lord, he just ran with everything. God just ran with everything to the point where we got it resolved. Some people, it's not that simple and it's not that easy. Sometimes it may take years of things that have been compiled and compressed, and to uncompress. Remember how we digitally would take packages and unzip them? Remember that? Unzip them and uncompress them so that it can just come all out. It can just come out. And I just want you to know out there that if this has happened to you, there are places that you can go. There are people that you can talk to in confidence that won't take your business out in the street, okay? That will help and not be a hindrance. Because that's important, that you know that there are people there to help. And I wanted to bring up some places. I wanted to bring up, and I want permission right now from Mama Tila right now to refer you to her. Her name is Tila Mickles. She's amazing. And she helped me to be able to, and I'm asking for your permission right now, to get help in those areas, especially if you're having a problem with, someone who's been in jail and been abused, because abuse doesn't just happen when you are a child. Abuse can also happen when you're in jail. Did you know that? Abuse can happen in jail. Did you know that? Many people don't speak to abuse when people go to jail, or when people uh, go to and get in situations that they didn't ever dream about. When they get drunk, or things happen to them as adults and not just as children. I wanted to also talk about as well, if I may be allowed, uh, sometimes when men do things, and I'm talking about these men that are abusers, sometimes it's like it's a club. It's not a club, it's abusive. It's abusive.
So let's define that a little bit
Yes.
more, because there's so much more we can unpack here. But I'm going to give you a scenario, and maybe if you're a young man or if you're an older man, you may be able to relate to this scenario. This scenario that I'm going to describe will not be graphic, but it will help to shed light. So oftentimes men want to bring young men into the company of men. They want to take boys and bring them into the company of men, right? And that desire for men to take boys and to help them be men is a good thing. We want men to teach boys how to be men. unfortunately, because we live in a fallen world, sometimes what we define as manhood uh, is not what the Bible would call manhood.
Right.
The things that the Bible would call manhood would be responsibility, accountability, leadership, provision, protection, honor, integrity, virtue. Okay, these are the sort of things that the Bible would, some of the qualities the Bible would describe as what men of God would possess. The world describes manhood, especially in our Black communities, a little differently. It's defined by your sexual prowess, how many girls you can get, how much you can dominate someone else, how much you can control other people, how much you can. I'm going to describe the scenario is younger boy gets in the company of older boy or man. Man decides that he's going to show boy how to be a man and introduces him to pornography. Now, boy may have never seen pornography before, may not have even grown up sufficiently to be puberty, to have his sexuality be really grown up yet, may not even know what's going on. But man feels like boy needs to be exposed to this pornography in order to bring him into the company of men. Because for whatever reason, the man believes that the pornography or the sexuality that is being expressed is a way for this boy to have a shared secret that all men supposedly share. Remember when I was talking earlier about the bond of secrecy, the bond of holding secrets. But what happens oftentimes in these situations is that when the man is introducing the pornography to the boy, mutual pleasuring takes place. Each person then is aroused, and then each person may take action on that arousal. And I'm being discreet because I know this is a family show. But sometimes when that man is doing that with that boy, he's more interested in watching the boy's arousal and reaction than he is to even watching the pornography itself. And that is predatory. It's also predatory to encourage boys who are not of age to do things sexually
in the first place.
That's abuse. And if you are a young man and you've been struggling with pornography, if this scenario happened to you, I want you to know that it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault that that man introduced you to something before your spirit and your mind and your maturity was ready to handle it, because that
through the eye gate,
that powerful arousal experience that was generated through the pornography was an overwhelming flood that came over you without you having the physical or the spiritual maturity to even understand or put it in context. But what it did was it created a desire to see more of it, because it's a powerful experience. Some men use this as a gateway to groom young people for doing other things sexually. Eventually it's, well, instead of you just watching it, you should do something to release that tension that you're feeling when you see it. And then it goes on to, well, you want to see how I release my tension when this happens.
That's what Satan did in the Garden of Eden. Look at this. Look how this fruit and its pleasure goes to the sight. You see what I'm saying?
And then, of course, the boy, and by boy, I mean anybody from baby all the way up to adulthood. Okay, so I don't mean to say that you're a boy if you're 17, but I'm using boy to differentiate between an adult who knows better and a young person who is growing up trying to find his way. There's confusion that happens because on the one hand, physically, there's a good feeling, but there's a secrecy around it, that bond of secrecy, as well as there could be guilt, there could be shame, because most of the time we are modest with our bodies, and exposing our body and these strong feelings to someone other than our doctor or our parent can be an uncomfortable or shameful feeling. And so now you're locked into this shame cycle, but it feels good and you don't know how to reconcile those two things. And so what ends up resulting can be either an addiction to pornography, or it can lead into being groomed by a
true.
molester, or it can see them as objects for your own pleasure and not fully rounded human beings that have thoughts and emotions and a soul and opinions and a future. And it destroys what God has intended to be a beautiful thing between you and your spouse. So if that has happened to you, it's okay to recognize that that was wrong and it was abusive, and start from there to simply say, yes, that happened to me, but it does not have to control me and it does not have to define me. And so I see we're getting here close to the end already. Boy, we've talked about so much.
Yeah. Another thing is sometimes there's soft rape, where you have a child where it was their first encounter was more, it wasn't even it didn't become a physical thing as far as sexual. It was more of that child, man child, or girl child. They're really, 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 really super mental. We have to recognize that can have effect on children too as well. If you have a young man that's, like you said, there's a different word. It's not the word groomed, because groomed, it's a word. It does have a negative connotation, but there's another word that I'm looking for in particular.
Marinated, massaged, prepared.
No, but it deals with being set up to be groomed. I hate that. And so I got my food with me today. See? So, having said all that, sometimes they'll prepare that child physically and mentally first. No sex, just only that child is a type of sex, but it's not the actual physical act of it. So they will have, this may be a man with a man child, and have the man child laying on his chest and feeling his hair and frilling through and doing stuff, is what I'm saying. And see these things, and you have to address them immediately, right away. Okay? And you have to understand that it's not always as simple. Jackie, sometimes it's not just simple all the time.
No, it's not. And that's what makes
simple.
And that's what makes it something that needs real spiritual attention in order to get down into the true intent of the soul and the heart, to really break that thing and to really get some freedom. Because if a person is giving you a false intimacy, they're making you feel good about yourself, they're telling you that, oh, nobody loves you like I love you, and come sit on my lap, or come and hang out with me. Now that's a grown adult. What interest do they have of hanging out with a young person? Or it's okay if mom and dad aren't paying attention to you. I got you. Or buying gifts. So there's a lot of things that happen that feel good initially, even though the intuition says something is not quite right.
Right.
And so it takes time to extract, as you said, those layers,
right,
to figure out those things. And it doesn't always feel bad. And that's the part that's tough,
what I was talking about.
Physically, your body is a biological organism that is designed to carry on the human race by procreation. Just as simple as that. So no matter who you are, if you're exposed to material that's designed to sexually arouse you, your body will respond.
Even if you don't want to mentally.
You got it. Even if in your mind you're saying this is wrong, or I'm uncomfortable, or this is not a right situation, your body is going to do what it's designed to do. That's why that man or that woman was not interested in having a positive sexual experience, hence the rape. But their body did what their body does. And I think I might be saying something to somebody out there.
Yes.
If you were the victim of a sexual assault or a rape, and you experienced a climax, even though your mind was not in agreement, your body, I just want you to be encouraged that your body just simply did what bodies do. But that does not mean.
Or if you watch something that you shouldn't have watched, and I'm speaking to somebody that was torturous to someone, and your body reacted to that, that's another thing, Jackie.
But I want to encourage you that your physical reaction to the event does not mean that it was okay for it to happen to you. Somebody out there says, well, man, I was raped, but I had an orgasm. So I either must have liked it, or I must have asked for it, or it must have been okay because my body responded. No, it was wrong. What happened to you? Your body is going to just do what biology does. And you cannot penalize yourself for what biology does any more than a person who has a nocturnal emission while they're asleep, if they have a sexual dream. Wrong. Okay, so I want you to separate the two, that your mental or your spiritual reaction of saying this is not right, this is not of God, I did not want this, ask for this, whatever, even if your body did something different, it was still wrong.
Yes.
God still can heal.
Yes.
And you can start there and say, this event does not need to define me or control me. That's where you start, is that, yes, this happened. It does not need to control me. It does not need to define me. I can give an example from my own life, and I won't give any names, dates, or places because Omaha is a small city. But I will say that when I was a young person, I have to really be careful here. I'll just say that I was in a situation over time where there were several teenage boys in a household, and at least 3 of those teenage boys did something sexual to me when I was young, probably around 6. 3 of the incidents I remember. One of the incidents I have probably blocked out because I can't recall it to save the life of me, but I know something happened. And I can remember feeling an intense feeling of guilt over at least one of them, because by that time, age 6, I had started to develop that understanding of right from wrong. Because we all go through that as kids. When we're babies, we don't know the difference between right and wrong. But as you grow older, you begin to get a conscience. You begin to understand that some things are right, some things are not right. So around that age, some things happen. But I remember one of the incidents, one in particular, and it was, I won't say it was a pleasurable experience, but I'll say it wasn't a not pleasurable experience. I don't know how to describe it. And for a very long time, I didn't know enough about sex to know how sex worked, how babies were made. So here I am, probably somewhere between the ages of 6 and 10, every single day walking around afraid that I was pregnant because of this one thing that happened to me from this one teenage boy. And I will say that these 3 teenage boys were probably just sexually experimenting, and I happened to be available. And so their curiosity, they used me as the vessel to explore their curiosity. So there was a bond of shame there. There was a bond of secrecy there that I never told. I didn't tell my parents until I was well into adulthood. Even then, I didn't even tell my father. I only told my mother. I knew she would tell my dad. So I knew that telling her would tell him, but this was well into adulthood. And when I told my mom as an adult, number 1, she didn't freak out. Number 2, I could tell she was very sad and sorrowful. And number 3, she said, had I have known, I would have done something about it and I would have protected you. And I want you to know that that was all I needed, was just the confidence to know that had I have spoken up, she would have immediately done something about the situation. And that was very freeing to me. But I didn't get that until I became an adult. So I can see how those experiences did shape my outlook. It shaped my ideas about girls and boys and sex and babies and pregnancy and all that stuff. I can see how it did influence those things. But I know now that, yes, those things happened. They no longer control me, and they definitely don't define me. They are a speed bump on the road of life for me. It's something that happened that helps me to have a point of reference to relate to people. I've never confronted these individuals. Never, not to this day. It has never come up. I haven't seen them, but I don't hold any ill feelings toward them. It's just something that happened. I don't know how to really time to be able to put it in its proper context and understand that now as an adult, I can look back and I can say, well, that's terrible that this 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, however old I was, child was carrying around this fear and this guilt and this shame, thinking that she might be pregnant. Does that not sound crazy to you? Like if you saw a 6-year-old child just come in and say, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm pregnant because this boy, rubbed this or did that or whatever have you," you would immediately tell that child, "Oh no, first of all, that's not possible. You're too young. Second of all, it's not your fault. Third of all, let me remove you from that situation so you don't have to feel that way negatively, that this is something you don't need to worry about. We got you." Oftentimes when we have a traumatic event happen to us, we don't know how to put it in context because we're kids. Kids don't have life experience nor the maturity to put it in context. Then as we get older, we put a context around the experience that may or may not be accurate. Like, for example, we may say, "Oh, it was my fault that happened." Or we may say, "I'm a terrible person because that happened." Or we may say, "I will never trust another woman or never trust another man ever again because that happened." And we draw these conclusions, but we're only kids. And so as an adult, we have to look back on that child, as you mentioned, and say, if I were looking at somebody else as a child that went through that, how would I respond to that child? And then you as the adult give that child, meaning the child that was you, the advice you would give to any other child to love them, affirm them, protect them, and help to put things in context.
Yeah, because when I had told, and it wasn't just the first time that I had told somebody, but I remember one time when she said, "Well, did you fight?" Now this was a woman now that said, "Did you fight? Did you try to even fight them?" And I said, "Yeah." I went like that. She's like, "That's not fighting." That's what she told me. That's not fighting. Okay, so hitting them right here and boom, and hitting them right here, that ain't fighting. And for a long time I was like, wow. So
And they made you feel like you had done something wrong by not
Right.
doing something, but now you as an adult looking back on that child, if some other child said, "Well, I went you wouldn't expect that child could overpower a bigger, stronger boy to be able to do anything to stop it.
It was pick up something and hurt them, like pick up a brick or pick up a this. So from there on, it was, okay, anybody that touched me, I'm gonna murder you. You see what I'm saying? And by the way, the ones that try to do that to me, I'm gonna find y'all and murder y'all. Because that's why I said it's all about what you do. Because I felt like, well, I guess I didn't do the best I could do. I didn't know to pick up something instead. So I blame myself. That if I didn't fight, or well, they told you they was gonna kill your mother, and kill your brother, that they're gonna smother him with a pillow, and literally smother my brother in front of me. Well, we're gonna do this to you if you don't do what we tell you to do. Well, I'm wrong because I didn't try my best to pick up whatever else I saw. That nothing came to my mind to do that. Only thing that came to my mind was to hit. And I don't even know if I thought that's fighting when you hit somebody. I guess that's not fighting. But at the time, this is what I'm saying is you have to be careful about how you handle certain situations, because your children, that's what they are. They're children. They don't think of every single thing. They don't think as adults do. And people treat children like adults and put them in adult situations to even make decisions like that. And that's the reason why we have to really, really ask the Lord to help us, because He is the one that brings the balm in Gilead. And that's the reason why I had to have a lot of therapy, Jackie. I had to have a lot of therapy because there were just so many different types of ways and scenarios. And then, of course, at the end of the day, when I became an adult, a young adult actually, then I was 20, I just started to blame my mother. You know what? I wouldn't have been in a foster home in the first place if she hadn't have did this or did that, or my family hadn't to intervene and, you know, and somehow kept me from going in the foster home. Then after that, I just started hating everybody in the family. Like, you know, y'all didn't have yourself together to the point where y'all could take me, or you could have took me, but you didn't want to take me because you wasn't getting enough money. You know, it was just always something, is what I'm saying. We begin to blame others and take our anger out on others, on other people. You see, so yeah, I'm sure there's some places right here, if we look it up, that we can refer them to as well. But
So
forgiveness, I found
there's a
hold on. I found in myself that I'm the key. Forgiving is the forgiving is the answer. And love and forgiveness is the key. It's the key that unlocks any door to your life and to anyone else. Go ahead, Jackie.
Well, a question came in from one of our listeners. What are your recommendations for forgiving your abuser, either sexually or physically abused? That's a great question.
Yes, it is.
And I'm going to say what forgiveness looks like for you is going to be. For some people, forgiveness just comes easy. They don't have long wicks. They don't have long memories. Something happens, it happened, they feel it, they move on. Other people, it takes more time to process through their feelings, and it may not be something where you just immediately, okay, forgive. Part of the reason why we don't forgive is because we think that forgiveness means that it was okay what happened, or it's okay for it to continue to happen. And that is absolutely not true.
Or some people don't know what the definition of forgiveness. They don't know what that really is. How many people out there don't know what forgiveness is? They don't know the definition of it, or they don't know how to forgive because they've never been taught. And I had never been truly taught how to forgive, because I didn't really actually release a lot of that until later on in my life. Or you know, running away from the foster homes. All y'all do is you know, I used to claim that all foster homes were just putting you in sexual nest. That, remember I told you about that? That's all a foster home is. They just want to put you in a sexual nest. You know, that they just want you to chirp from there and just, you know, get bit on and ate up and all kind. That's what I thought. And I used to call them the baby snatchers. Remember, I used to say that all the time. And every time I would drive, believe this or not, every time I would drive past the state of Nebraska foster care, I always used to flip the bird at them. That's the truth before God. God know I'm telling the truth every single time. Every single time. I don't do that anymore because God has set me free. That's how you know when you're free. When you're free, when you don't have to do that stuff, you don't even care, it ain't even on your mind. God takes it away. But maybe we can define the definition of forgiveness.
Yes. Now you know, we're a Christian show, so normally I would go to the scriptures, and I think scriptures are a good place. But this time I'm going to read something that's not scriptural; it's psychological, but it's going to fit into where we are as believers. And this is from berkeley.edu. It's greatergood.berkeley.edu, and the topic is, what is forgiveness? Psychologists generally define forgiveness as a conscious, deliberate decision, key word, decision, to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness.
Come on here.
Just as important.
Read that one more time.
Okay. Forgiveness is a conscious, deliberate decision. Ultimately, forgiveness is a decision to release those feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve it or not.
Yep.
Okay. So what this is simply saying, and to put it in a biblical context, well, how can I release my feelings of resentment and vengeance to this person that has wronged me? When every movie I see, the hero goes to get vengeance because, you know, the bad guy killed the daughter, and then they go and they kill the bad guy. And, you know, our whole culture says that vengeance, 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 get revenge, be angry,
And how can I
Be
forgive
bitter.
them when they didn't even say they were sorry, bastards?
So this is the world's perspective on it, that you never forgive and you always try to get revenge. But the Bible says that, or the judgment upon that person, it may not be today, it may not be in this lifetime, but ultimately they will stand before a righteous God who will righteously judge what they did to you. And because you know that as a believer, that God is a righteous and loving God,
Yes.
that is the why of why you can release your feelings of resentment or vengeance, because you know God is going to handle
deserve it or not, whether they deserve your forgiveness or not.
And they probably don't deserve your forgiveness, but that's not the point.
Come on.
The point is that regardless of what they did, God can handle it. And God may not do it in my timing, and God may not do it in the way I want to see it. And it seems like they just getting away with it and just moving on, sleeping good at night. And here I am stressed out, got insomnia, hair falling out, got ulcers, and I'm, worried and all this other stuff. The secret to forgiveness is that forgiveness is not for that other person, it's for you.
And I thought if I forgave the sex offenders against me, the perverts and all the other things I was thinking about it, I thought that was saying it was okay for them to also hurt other people. Because I said, if they hurt me, I know I'm not the only one. So you think if you forgive them, then that's letting them slide, and you think that that's letting it go. And that's not it. That's truly not.
Let me continue on with this article. Just as important as defining what forgiveness is, though, is understanding what forgiveness is not. Experts who study or teach forgiveness make clear that when you forgive, you don't gloss over or deny the seriousness of the offense against you. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting, nor does it mean condoning or excusing offenses. Though forgiveness can help repair a damaged relationship, it does not obligate you to reconcile with the person who has harmed you or release them from legal accountability.
That's right.
So I can forgive you for touching my child, but I'm still going to press charges.
Right.
I'm going to let God deal with your soul, but
and
I'm going to
get these hands. You're going to get these hands,
I don't know about that.
You're going to get these. Can I talk to you for a moment? You're real subtle, real nice. And how you been?
But in all seriousness,
dog food.
If you touch my child,
you're going to catch these hands.
I'm going to let God deal with your soul, but I'm going to let the courts deal with your life.
Oh, they can deal with it after you get done.
You say
after you get done.
Justice.
Right. You know what it is.
But let me continue on. Because you're joking, but not really. But
right.
Yeah.
You know me.
But it says, instead, forgiveness brings the forgiver, that's you, peace of mind, and it frees you from corrosive anger. While there is
corrosive. Read that again.
Corrosive anger. It frees you up to have peace of mind and frees you from corrosive anger.
Corrosive is where it erodes you. It literally wastes you away.
So while there's some deeply held negative feelings, in that way it empowers you. Here's where you take your power back. It empowers you to recognize the pain you suffered without letting that pain define you, enabling you to heal and move on with your life.
Read it again.
So experts agree that it involves letting go of your deeply held negative feelings.
It's deep down inside of you. It's inside of you. You know it's there. It peeks out. It rears its ugly head up at you. You know it's there. You can't be in denial about it.
It empowers you to recognize the pain that you suffered without having letting that pain define you, enabling you to heal and move on with your life. That's what I was saying earlier, how, yeah, that happened to me, but it doesn't control me and it doesn't define me.
Respond to it. So it's saying the reason why you let that pain go is so that you won't be distracted, and it's yelling at you, and it's yelling and it's hurling all kinds of it's like the house of flying daggers. It's hurling all kind of knives at you. But you know what? But baby, when God got you, those things, they repel. They repel. And there's a scripture that talks about when they shoot these arrows at you, because that's what they are, arrows, that guess what? They'll got to turn those arrows around and have them go back to the people in which they came from.
Well, here's the wrinkle in it all, or the secret sauce. Sometimes we're angry at someone because of something that happened, but we don't realize that we're angry at the wrong person. So we're directing our anger toward Chester
Good word.
molester,
That's a good word.
but really who we're angry at is mom for taking us over there to be babysat.
That's what
We're mad
happened.
at dad for leaving mom and not being around to kick Chester molester's butt. We're mad at
We used to call him
ourselves.
Booty Freak Fred. Remember that?
We're mad at ourselves for we knew that when Chester molester told us to come downstairs, we knew what he was going to try to do, and we went down there anyway. So we're actually angry and in unforgiveness to ourselves. Even though, like I said, we reinterpret things when we become an adult that we would not expect a child to respond in the same
And
way.
can I take it deeper? Sometimes we don't even say it's the mom, the dad. At the end of my, what happened to me, I went, like I said, in the 20s, I would turn 20, I blamed my mother and everybody. I never knew my father. And I had blamed her, but then when I couldn't blame her because after all, she was dead. She was dead when I turned 18. She had died. And so did my grandfather. That year was a terrible year for me. And I then started blaming God. That, well, even with my mother and everything that happened, there's somebody heart and said, man, do I even want you in my life? You don't even protect me. And I was a child, And let me tell you something. I was like, why do bad things happen to people, to good people, or to me? And the answer to that is, why does good things happen? Why do any good also thrive and also alive? Because I felt that there was no God above because he allowed those things to happen to me, Jackie, real talk. And I was angry with God for a very, very long time, even more than I was angry at my mother. I was like, because God, can't you control? I'm looking at a whole bunch of stuff happening, and I'm saying, can't they do something about it? Can't God do something about this? And guess what? God sure can.
Well, that would take us down a very deep road philosophically to good people. The simplest answer is if there was no God, why does any good happen in the world? Because left to our own devices, all of us are sinful in one way or another. And even those of us who are the best still have a inclination in our hearts to sometimes do wrong, whether it's a little white lie, or whether it's taking an extra pencil from the office,
or pride.
It can mean anything, pride or
I'm,
gossip or any
I don't
of
do
those
anything
things.
at all wrong.
None of us are perfect. And unfortunately, because God has given us free will, sometimes innocent people do become caught in what's called collateral damage from the sinful free will of other people. God wants us to love him willingly. If he just wanted slaves and robots, he could have just created slaves and robots. But God, when he created us with the capacity to love. And love requires a person's will. You cannot force someone to love you.
That's the truth.
You can't make somebody love you. No matter how much you love them, your love is not enough to make another person love you. They have to choose to love you.
Right.
And it's the same way with us, with God. We have to choose to love God and to follow him and to receive all the blessings that come from that. Some of us simply don't choose him. And we choose evil things. We choose to hurt other people. We choose to molest people. We choose to expose young boys to porn. We choose to expose young people to things before their bodies or their spirits are able to handle it. We choose to hurt somebody physically. All these things are a result of free will. And that is why at the end, God is going to set it all right.
Hallelujah.
There is a day coming, the great white throne of judgment, which is talked about in the end of the book of Revelation. And it says books will be opened. And those books contain every single thing we've ever said, thought, or did. And if we are not covered by the blood of Jesus Christ, who redeemed us for himself, if we are not covered with that blood, everything we've ever done will be judged, and we will be found guilty, and we will receive the penalty therein. It's kind of like when your mom was pregnant with you, you were born into the human race, but you weren't a part of her family until she took you home from the hospital. In the same way, all of us are God's creation, but we have to choose God in order to be his child. He's already chosen us. He's saying, please come and live with us. But he's not going to force us to live in his family if we don't want to. And then unfortunately, some people, day is coming and God is going to make it all right. And your best course of action is to give that to God and let him take care of it. Because I guarantee you, God's method of judgment is way better than anything we could ever do.
Right.
Because whatever that person did to you, they're probably sleeping good tonight, and they've been sleeping good. And if you want to sleep good, you just have to let God handle it. You have to figure out who exactly you're angry at. Because there may be a whole bunch of people, but it may really be just one down at the bottom. I was watching this show called Killing Eve. It's a really crazy show. But there's this psychopathic assassin woman in the show, and she just kills people for sport, and she just really loves it and all that. But in this latest season, she finds her long-lost mother. And it turns out that all of her anger was from her mother abandoning her. And she ends up murdering her mother, which is kind of crazy. But once she ended up murdering her mother, she discovered that all those other people she had been murdering along the way, all those years, really was a substitute for the person she was really truly the most angry at, which was her mother. And so oftentimes we think we're angry at the person that did something to us, and we probably are. But dig a little deeper. Think about it a little more deeply to say, is there anyone else that maybe I'm upset at deeper than that? And oftentimes it is a parent or a sibling or a trusted adult that was supposed to protect us, a grandparent, somebody. And those are the things where you just want to say, you know what? I don't know what their situation was, why they ended up making the choices that they made. We can't go back in time and change it. I can try to understand it. But even if I don't understand it, I know that I trust God enough to know that he's going to make it all right.
Yes.
One day in the end, either in this life or at the end. He is going to make it right. And if you truly, especially if you're a believer and you've been covered by the blood of Jesus and you know how he has covered all of your sins, the Bible says that he who has been forgiven much loves much.
Yeah.
It also says that to him for whom much has been given, much is required. It also says that if we don't forgive others, then God can't forgive us. And so as a believer, we have an obligation to forgive because we know how much God has forgiven us. But that doesn't really sit good when someone hurts you or may still be hurting you.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't always feel so good emotionally to say that. But what it will make you feel good is to say, one day at a time, one layer at a time, I'm going to give this to God. And sometimes we give it to God and we take it back. Give it to him again and take it back.
That's going to happen.
Give it
sometimes.
again. You know, and
Yeah,
sometimes you'll
gonna
start
happen.
digging those layers and you'll discover other layers, maybe
Mhm.
memories you have forgotten, incidents that
Suppressed.
occurred that you hadn't thought about in years may start coming to the surface. Don't be afraid of that.
Right. Boo.
Because
Yeah,
when
will come
those
out.
when those thoughts and feelings come up and you're like, oh man, I hadn't thought about that for all these years, and now it's coming up and it feels like it just happened yesterday. I want you to know that A, that's normal, B, that's progress, and C, God is healing you.
Yes.
He's getting down into the inner
Hallelujah.
layers.
Hallelujah.
The outer layer is, okay, I may not be able to forgive this person, but I'm just going to call a truce about being upset about it. And maybe that's as far as you can get. Maybe that's all you can give is, okay, I may not be able to fully forgive them, but I'm going to call a truce
Mm-hmm.
with fighting them. Basically, okay, we're not at peace, but I'm going to call a ceasefire. If that's all you can do today, then that's a step forward for you.
Right.
And as things keep going, he's going to just layers and layers and layers. Things may start coming up that you hadn't
Yes.
thought about, deeper thoughts, deeper traumas, deeper issues. Don't be afraid of those.
Yeah, that's
And
what happened to me. It scared the living lights out of me when things that I didn't, as I started talking about things started coming up that I didn't remember that came up and just floored me, literally floored me. But all in all, God is a healer. I have 3 counselors that I want to refer you to. One of them is Tila Mickles. The next one is Serenity Matters, and they are very close friends of mine, Reggie and Crystal Prince. That's what they are. They're there to counsel. And then there's another company called BetterHelp. So BetterHelp.com, Serenity Matters, and Tila Mickles. If you and Crystal and Reggie, this is LuvLuv. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to handle that and to refer you. I really appreciate it. So, and Tila, I appreciate you too, Mama Tila. All right.
So I'm
So
going to go ahead and give you the closing words.
go ahead.
But just to say that if that has happened to you, or your child or someone you know comes to you with a revelation that something has happened, number one, don't panic, don't flip out. Number two, be supportive. Number three, don't blame the victim. And number four, don't deny that the abuser was capable of doing it. So that's the best way that you can help. If you have been a victim, begin to do that work to say that, yes, that happened to me, but it does not need to control me and it does not need to define me. You get to control what controls you, who controls you, which it should be God. You get to define who you are, and you do not have to let that experience define who you are. You take the power back when you forgive and when you put that experience in context that it was just a speed bump on your road of life. That's all. That's all it was. It does not need to be a mountain that stops your progress. Continue to allow the Lord to bring those layers to the surface and take them off one by one by one,
And
day
if-
by day by day.
And if you have been the abuser, that, because that has to be spoken to as well. If you were the one that abused someone for some reasons, and you don't know why, you need to get into therapy immediately. You need to get yourself some help immediately. Immediately. That's all I got to say that before you catch these hands.
You said Tila Mickles. Someone's
Tila
asking
Mickles.
about it. Serenity Matters.
Yes, Tila Mickles is with Compassion in Action.
Serenity Matters.
Serenity Matters Counseling, which is on Dodge Street in Omaha, Nebraska, 50th and Dodge. And that's Reggie and Crystal Prince. And then BetterHelp.com. Just BetterHelp.com. If you want to get on there and you want to, you just want to get on there, and they will lead you where you need to go. They have individual counseling. They have couples counseling. They have teenage counseling. So they work in different sectors and areas